Good evening, loyal listeners, and welcome to Wilhelm Presents Frightening Tales and Other Weird Stories. I'm your host, Wilhelm. Each week I invite you to dim the lights and settle in as we explore the dark and unsettling tales of the paranormal. Stories conjured by authors from all over this world. If you dare to share a fiction of your own, submit it at frighteningtales.com. And should you find yourself still wanting, more than 130 previous episodes await you, patiently in the dark. Today's tale is written by Bailley Burbage, passionate about writing for many years, using her craft to escape and create a place for people to land. A recent college graduate, she continues to pursue her lifelong love of storytelling while working on her debut novel. Bailley enjoys exploring new ideas, creating immersive worlds, and writing stories that connect with readers on an emotional level. She hopes to complete her first novel within the next year. It looks forward to sharing many more stories in the future. But today, she shares her tale. Come out. The door moves. The knuckles crack. The sound knocks off the walls. It happens like this every night. The windows shake, the pictures sway, the sound knocks off the walls. It's been happening for a year. Sometimes it goes away for a while. She convinces herself she must be making it up. The night sky blurs. The covers go over her head. The sound knocks off the walls. She hates the sound. It wakes her every night. She always felt a pinch on the inside of her elbow. There was always a distant beep. She thought it was her heart. She's told herself it's a nightmare. People have those all the time. People have all types of disorders. She must have one. She already had a few. Her father went missing last spring. That was the last night she had uninterrupted sleep. He disappeared in the middle of the night. Her mother was a mess. Her parents had her in high school. Her mother wanted to go to art school. Her father never wanted to leave. The sleepless nights became part of her routine. She knew she'd never get a good night's rest again. Maybe it was him, she thought. Maybe he was coming to get her. Her priest told her to pray. Her mind told her to seek. There was a shop in town filled with things that caught dreams and people who believed in more than black and white. The lady with the fiery hair told her to set up a camera to find what was out there. She thought they were laughing at her, but she also knew it wasn't a bad idea. She made sure her mother was asleep. She crept down the hall into the kitchen and grabbed the chair her grandfather made years before her. She set up a video camera, climbed back into bed, and by the grace of God, fell asleep. There were no knocks. She woke to fresh morning light reflecting through her windows. She jumped out of bed to find the camera. The anticipation was eating at her, but there was nothing to find. the camera was gone. Her mother was dead asleep. She searched the house. There was never a sign of the camera. Only the rickety old chair sat in the hallway. It had just vanished, like her father. She spent the day trying to figure out what to do. Finally, she headed back to the shop with the strange people and the dream catchers. But there was no shop. It wasn't there. It never was. Trees stood in its place, and a large pond glistened beneath the afternoon sun. It must be the lack of sleep, she thought. She must have dreamt of the shop. She must have dreamt of setting up the camera. She used to do that a lot. Dream about real things. She still wanted to scream. She wanted to cry and shout at the sky. She went to bed the next night, hoping for silence. She used to do that a lot. Dream about real things. Still, she wanted to scream. She wanted to cry and shout at the sky. She went to bed the next night hoping for silence. She didn't get it. This time, she woke to footsteps. Slow, shuffling, pacing. The bedroom door began to open. It creaked as it scraped across the floor. She hid beneath the covers until she heard her name. It was her mother's voice. She looked up to see her mother standing in the dark doorway. Her mother simply stared. "Do you want to come out?" she asked. She looked at her mother in confusion. Has it been her the entire time? Has she been waking me in the night? Her mother remained there, mouth hanging open, as if waiting to ask again. "Do you want to come out?" She looked closer now. Her mother's eyes were wet. They glistened in the light spilling through the window from the street lamp outside. "Mom, you're scaring me." "I need you to come out." Now she was yelling. Now tears were running down her face. "They're going to take you, Janie. You'll never come back. I need you to come out." Just then, darkness gathered behind her mother. It swarmed her. She tried to yell again, but she was gone. Her mother was gone. The darkness drifted closer. She squeezed her eyes shut. There was a sharp pinch on the inside of her elbow. There was pain. There was light. The beeps rattled off the walls. There were voices. There were wheels screeching across the floor. There were chords. She looked around. The store clerk with the fiery hair stood beside her, dressed in scrubs and holding a clear clipboard. The air smelled of chemicals. The beeps rattled off the walls. There was a picture of her father surrounded by flowers. A memorial. Then her mother cried. "She's back!" Thank you, Bailley Burbage, for that wonderful story that you've shared with us all. Now we still have some time in this episode, so I'd like to share something short that I've written myself. Here's a tale that I call In the Dark Beyond the Screen. I never thought I'd own an iPad. Truth is, I didn't even own a television. When I first moved into that apartment, I couldn't afford one. Between rent, truck payments, insurance, and groceries, there really wasn't much left. The apartment was cheap. Well, I like the term affordable, but that was because it earned every penny of its discount. The windows leaked cold air all winter. The plumbing had a mind of its own. The floors weren't level, not even close. You could stand in the kitchen and watch a marble slowly roll towards the same corner every single time. Still, it was mine. Well, rented mine. After a while, you stop worrying about what you don't have, and then work got busy. Really busy. The boss landed a few commercial siding jobs. The Saturdays became optional if you wanted the overtime. I wanted the overtime. Every extra hour went into a coffee tin above the fridge. Some guys bought new rims. Some bought big screen TVs. I bought an iPad. It wasn't flashy, it was practical. I could watch movies on it, check my email, pay my bills, read the news, as fake as it is these days. Even look for another job if work slowed down. One thing that did everything. That made sense to me. Funny how the one nice thing I owned turned out to be the worst purchase of my life. Installing siding isn't glamorous. Nobody slows down to admire the guy carrying 12-foot lengths of vinyl up a ladder. They admire the finished house, not the guy whose shoulders are screaming at the end of the day. That Tuesday had started before sunrise. By the time I got home, my shirt was stiff with dried sweat and sawdust clung to the cuffs of my jeans. When I pulled into the apartment parking lot, I just sat there for a minute. The truck engine ticked while it cooled. I could feel my heartbeat in my forearms. Ever use a drill for 8 hours straight? Your fingers don't stop squeezing when you let go. It's like your hands forget they're allowed to relax. I finally climbed out and grabbed my lunch cooler, empty like every day. 3 flights of stairs. I counted them because my knees did. By the second landing, my back had already started complaining. By the third, it won. Apartment 3C. Same old swollen door. I slipped my key into the lock and leaned my shoulder against it. The door scraped across the floor before giving up with a long groan. Every day, same sound. Some people would have fixed it. I lived with it long enough that it sounded like someone saying, "Welcome home." The apartment greeted me the way it always did. Quiet. No television, no music, just the low electrical hum of the refrigerator drifting in from the kitchen. I dropped my keys into the ceramic bowl by the door. The little clink echoed farther than it should have. Old apartments did that. They make little noises feel bigger than they are. I kicked off my boots. One landed neatly beside the mat. The other hit the wall. Well, good enough. My shoulders relaxed the second my tool belt hit the floor. It landed with a heavy thump. Funny. You don't realize how much weight you've been carrying until it isn't hanging off you anymore. The apartment smelled the way it always did. Old wood, coffee, a little dust. There was another smell, too. The hallway always smelled faintly of boiled cabbage. I'd lived there nearly 3 years and never once saw anyone cooking cabbage. It didn't matter. The smell was always there. Like the building itself had decided that was what old age smelled like. I opened the fridge, half a carton of milk, mustard, eggs, a leftover slice of pizza that had probably crossed the line yesterday. Chinese takeout it was. The little place down the street knew my order before I said it. I ate standing over the sink, not because I wanted to, because if I'd sat down, I wasn't getting back up. After dinner, I stood in the shower until the hot water began turning warm instead of hot. The old water heater that had exactly one good shower in it every evening. Mine. I brushed my teeth, set the coffee maker for 6:30, checked the weather on my phone. Rain. Perfect. Nothing makes aluminum siding more fun than wet gloves. I climbed into bed with a groan that I pretended not to hear. The mattress answered with one of its own. For a few seconds, I just lay there, staring at the ceiling. My body was doing that thing it always did after a long day. I yawned and reached for the button along the top edge of my iPad. My thumb stopped. Just another minute. I wasn't even watching anything anymore. The video had ended somewhere along the way, and YouTube was politely asking if I wanted to keep ruining tomorrow by starting another one. I smiled. Just one more. I tapped the screen. Some guy in Ohio was restoring a rusty vise he found in a yard sale. Perfect. Exactly the kind of thing I could half watch while my brain slowly shuts itself off. The room beyond the screen no longer existed. It was funny when you thought about it. The iPad wasn't that big, maybe 10 inches across. But somehow those 10 inches erased an entire bedroom. I could have been lying in a castle, or a cave, or the middle of a football field. The only thing that existed was the little island of light floating 6 inches above my face. The narrator was explaining the difference between cast steel and forged steel when I heard it. Creak. I paused the video. Silence. Not unusual. Old buildings settled. Wood expanded. Pipes knocked. I spent enough years around houses to know they all complained about something. I hit play again. Now, what you're looking for is pitting. Creak. Pause. Again. Nothing. I glanced over the top edge of the iPad. The room was still invisible. The screen was too bright. I could just make out the faint reflection of my own face staring back at me. I dragged the brightness slider down. Half? Better? Not much. The bedroom was still swallowed by darkness. The video resumed. The guy was wire brushing rust from the vise now. Oddly satisfying. I felt myself relaxing again. My shoulders settled into the mattress. The muscles in my forearms finally unclenched, and then skrrr. Not a creak, not a pipe, something longer, like dragging a chair. No, not a chair, something heavier, something slower. I paused the video again. The silence afterward felt wrong. The refrigerator was still humming from the kitchen. Rain still tapped against the window, but the apartment itself, it sounded like it was listening. I laughed, quietly. Get a grip. My own voice sounded strange, small, like I'd interrupted someone. I turned the volume up on the iPad, not because I couldn't hear the video, because I didn't want to hear the apartment. The guy restoring the vice kept talking. I wasn't listening anymore. Every few seconds, my eyes drifted above the screen, trying to look into the room, trying to convince myself there wasn't anything to see. There never was, just darkness. Then something occurred to me. I turned the iPad sideways and held it toward the foot of the bed. The screen cast a weak blue glow across the blanket. It barely reached my knees. Everything beyond that dissolved into black. I frowned. I'd never noticed that before. This thing could stream movies from anywhere in the world, but it couldn't light the end of my bedroom? I set it back in front of me. The video kept playing. I couldn't tell you a single word the man said after that. Every few seconds, I'd pause. I'd listen and hear nothing. Then hit play again. The pause became longer, the video became shorter. Until eventually I realized I wasn't using the iPad to watch videos anymore. I was using it because I was afraid to turn it off. I told myself I was being ridiculous. It was an old apartment. Old apartments made old apartment noises. That was the end of it. I tapped the screen. The video resumed. The guy was explaining why he'd decided to save the original paint instead of stripping it. I watched for maybe 30 seconds. Couldn't have repeated a word he'd said. My ears weren't on the video anymore. They were somewhere out in the room, listening, waiting. Every few moments, I'd catch myself looking over the top edge of the iPad, trying to see past it. The screen was still too bright. The bedroom simply refused to exist. It struck me as funny. I could use the thing to watch television from halfway around the world, but I couldn't see 6 feet to the end of my own bed. The bedroom simply refused to exist. I dragged the brightness down another notch. The screen dimmed. The room didn't get any brighter. My eyes had already given up trying. Another scrape. Long, slow. I paused the video. Nothing. I waited. 5 seconds. 10, 20. Nothing. I shook my head. You're tired. The words sounded small. The apartment swallowed them. I hit play again. The narrator's voice filled the room. I turned the volume up a little. Not because I wanted to hear him, because I didn't want to hear anything else. It worked. For nearly a minute. And then, creak, the hallway. Not loud, just one floorboard. I knew that board, third one from the stairwell. It always complained. Usually another answered a second later, and then another. Somebody walking. Tonight? There was only one. Silence. I looked towards the bedroom door. Nothing. Just darkness. I thought about turning the bedside lamp on, but didn't. Somehow that felt like admitting I was frightened. Instead, I picked up the iPad, held it a little higher, as if it somehow protected me. It didn't. It just made the room disappear again. Another notification slid across the top of the screen. Battery, 9%. I frowned. Of course. I'd forgotten to charge it. I reached for the cable on the nightstand, missed it. Found it on the second try. The connector clicked into place. Relief. A ridiculous thing to feel relieved about, but I did. The screen stayed alive. I settled back into the pillow. Another video started. Then something caught my eye. Not in the room. In the reflection. The black border around the screen had become just reflective enough that I could faintly see behind me. Only the reflection didn't make sense. I tilted the iPad. The image shifted. Just my own room. The headboard, a sliver of wall, nothing else. I let out a breath. You're looking for things now. That's all this is. I laughed once. It sounded forced. Then I opened my email, scanned through a few messages without reading them, looked at tomorrow's work order, closed it, opened the weather again. Still rain. Good. Something ordinary. Something real. I stayed there longer than I needed to. Anything to avoid turning the screen off. The battery climbed to 10%. 11. Outside, rain tapped softly against the window. The refrigerator hummed. The pipes clicked. The apartment slowly began sounding familiar again. Maybe that was all it had been. Just one of those nights. I reached for the sleep button and stopped. My thumb hovered over it. The room beyond the screen waited. I realized something then. As long as the iPad was on, I didn't have to look at the dark. I could pretend it wasn't there. I smiled at myself. You're acting like a little kid. I pressed the button. The screen went black. For a heartbeat, all I could see was my own reflection, and then it disappeared. The bedroom rushed back around me. My eyes searched desperately for shapes. The dresser, the chair, the curtains, the bedroom door, open. I was almost sure it hadn't been. Then the hallway floor answered. One slow, measured creak, followed by another. closer. Not walking, approaching. I reached for the iPad again, not to watch another video, to turn the screen back on. My thumb found the power button. The Apple logo glowed. Those few seconds while it woke up felt longer than the rest of the night, and then something scraped. Not in the hallway, at the foot of my bed. I don't know how long I lay there staring over the top of the iPad. Long enough for my arm to start getting tired. Long enough that I almost convinced myself I'd imagined the whole thing. The video was still playing. The man restoring the vise had moved on to polishing the handle. His voice was steady, calm, almost hypnotic. I wasn't watching anymore. Every few seconds, I'd pause the video, listen, hear nothing, and hit play again. I must have done that 20 times. Eventually, I laughed at myself. "You're exhausted," I whispered. "Go to sleep." I reached for the power button and then stopped. It wasn't fear, exactly. It was the strange feeling you get when you're standing on the top step of a staircase in the dark. You know the stairs are all still there. You've walked them 1,000 times. But for some reason, your foot refuses to trust what your brain already knows. The iPad had become that top step. As long as the screen was on, I didn't have to commit to the darkness around me. I could pretend the room ended where the light did. The battery icon flashed. 5%. I sighed. Come on. I checked for the charging cable on the side of the iPad. It was still there. I tugged at it. The cable moved easily in my hand, drawing closer and closer and closer until I held the other end of it. Something had unplugged it? Or I had pulled it out of the wall. I don't remember. 5% battery. I watched another minute of the video. Couldn't tell you a thing that happened in it. And then I heard it again. Not the hallway, not the pipes. The foot of my bed. It sounded like something hard being pulled across the hardwood floor. Slowly. Not scratching, dragging. I sat perfectly still. Maybe if I didn't move, whatever it was would move on. I don't know why I thought that. It just made sense at the time. The sound came again. This time I could tell exactly where it stopped, right against the footboard. My mouth had gone dry. I looked down at the iPad. The flashlight icon was staring back at me. I don't know why I hadn't thought of it sooner. Probably because I didn't actually want to know. If I turned the flashlight on and found nothing, I'd feel stupid. If I turned it on and found something, well, I didn't let myself finish that thought. My thumb hovered over the icon. I counted to 3, then pressed it. The light burst into the room so suddenly I actually blinked. I swept it across the dresser, the closet, my work boots, the footboard, nothing. Everywhere the beam landed looked perfectly ordinary. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. There, I said to myself. Happy now? I almost laughed. Almost. Then I moved the light towards the bedroom door. The hallway beyond it was empty. Old wallpaper, scuffed baseboards, the little thermostat I'd been meaning to replace the batteries in. Nothing else. I kept the light there for another second, maybe 2. I don't know why. Something just felt off. Then it happened. Something across the hallway, not into the room, across the opening, like someone walking past my bedroom door without ever turning their head. I only caught part of it. A shoulder, maybe? A head. No, not a head. It seemed taller than the door frame should have allowed. The whole thing lasted less than a second, then it was gone. I didn't scream. I didn't jump. I honestly wasn't even sure I'd seen anything. My first thought was that my eyes were playing tricks on me after staring at the screen for so long. I stood there, arguing with myself. Well, lied there. You didn't see anything. You couldn't have. Your eyes are tired. That's all this is. Then the hallway floor creaked. Not somewhere down the hall, right outside my bedroom. I knew that floor. This sounded heavier, like the wood had bent under a weight it wasn't used to carrying. I turned the flashlight off, not because I wanted to, because I suddenly couldn't stand looking at that doorway anymore. The darkness rushed back so quickly that I lost the room again. My eyes hadn't adjusted. Everything vanished. Without really thinking about it, I pulled the blanket over my head. I know how stupid that sounds. Believe me, I know. If there had been someone standing in my bedroom, a blanket wasn't going to stop them. But I wasn't hiding from being hurt. I was hiding from seeing something I couldn't explain. The blanket smelled like laundry detergent and clean cotton. It was familiar. The first familiar thing I'd felt in the last 10 minutes. Outside the blanket, the apartment was silent. Inside it, all I could hear was my own breathing. Then, something touched the footboard. Not a bang. Not a crash. Just enough pressure to make the wood complain. A long, slow groan. It was followed by a scraping sound, not one scrape, several drawn-out, patient scrapes, like someone slowly dragging their fingertips across varnished wood. I closed my eyes. I hadn't prayed in years. Not because I'd stopped believing. Life just gets busy. Sundays become another workday, then another chance to catch up on laundry. Before you know it, months have gone by, then years. Our Father. The words came easily. The next line didn't. Tried again. Nothing. I couldn't remember it. That frightened me almost as much as whatever was outside the blanket. So I stopped trying to remember the prayer. Instead, I said the only thing that came into my head. Please. I don't know who I was talking to. God? The thing outside? Myself? I just kept whispering it. Please, just leave. At some point, I must have fallen asleep. Exhaustion was a way of winning arguments your mind can't. The next thing I remember was my alarm. Morning sunlight was spilling around the edges of the blanket. For a few seconds, I couldn't remember why I was under it. Then everything came back. Every sound, every scrape. I pulled the blanket down slowly. The room looked exactly as it always had. I actually laughed. It was the kind of laugh you give yourself when you've made a fool of yourself. I got dressed in a hurry. I was already late for work. I reached down to grab my boots and That's when I noticed the floor. At first I thought the morning light was catching the varnish differently. I crouched beside the bed. 4 deep gouges ran across the hard wood, perfectly straight, perfectly parallel. They began at the footboard. I followed them with my eyes until they stopped at the bedroom door. I reached out and ran my fingers through one. The wood was fresh, raw, still pale beneath the finish. I sat there for a long time without moving. I've worked around houses most of my life. I know old wood. I know what years of wear look like. Those marks weren't old. They hadn't been there the night before. I'm sure of that. I would have noticed. No, these were far too new to be ignored.
Thank you, dear listeners, for venturing into the dark with me tonight. Return next week for another dark tale, lurking just beyond the veil. If you enjoyed your journey with me, support my work. Like, subscribe, rate, or leave a comment wherever possible. Most of all, share frightening tales and support the authors who dared to dream these machinations. Buy their books, read their writing, watch their videos, whatever you can. Until next time, when a new tale creeps across the airwaves, listen closely, if you're brave enough.